Looking at the woman on the bed, Li Shiqing's mouth smiled slightly. How dare you break into my lounge? You drugged me and you're going to pay for it. I woke up in a cold sweat. It's the same dream, damn it. The two kids reassured me that I was okay, they were there for me. I was so relieved to hug them. When I return home, I swear I'll take back everything that's mine. When we got off the plane, there was a lot of talk at the airport. All of them are words that describe how beautiful we are. I squatted down and told him I'd go and eat first and then I'd accompany River to the competition. Just as we were talking, an exclamation of surprise drew us in. A group of people are not surrounding, they're surprised I'm still alive. It's a boy on the ground. A man picks him up and reprimands the bodyguard behind him. A cold sweat broke out on the boy's face and you could tell he was in distress. Li Shiqing turned his head and reprimanded his men to drive to the hospital. When I look at the boy's symptoms, suddenly I realized that he had the same symptoms as Dreidel. I took the baby and shouted at Knight to stop, but as we looked into each other's eyes, a wonderful feeling came over me. I told Knight that he had the same symptoms as my son, and take out the medicine and show him if it's the same. Knight Seacham saw the medicine and requested me to feed his child 2 pills. I gently took out 2 pills and asked Knight to take them. I feel so cute watching him take his pills. And he's the same age as River Zwa. The little munchkin looks at his dad with big eyes and says he's fine. Li Shiqing said he needed someone to take care of Si Cohen and wanted me to go with him. I quickly waved my hand because I still had to take Droopy to the race. That's when Knight suddenly grabbed my sleeve. Look at the look on his face, it's like Dreidel. So I said yes. Knight wants me to be his mother. The bodyguard quickly drove the car over. Knight wants me to look after Knight in the car. But I've got 2 kids and I'm saying no. The 2 kids said in unison that I should take care of Knight first. Night Seeker thanked both my children. I looked at him with a soft and slightly small corner of his mouth. He's not as hard as he seems. On the road, I felt so sorry for the little child in front of me who was so disturbed by the disease. At that moment, River asked me if my little brother was asleep. I told her little brother was too tired. Aside from me, Drezel said that my little brother and I were very much alike, which made me freeze. I hinted to myself that it was just a coincidence. Li Shiqing in the front seat saw Mo Ningxi and felt familiar but couldn't recall. After checking, Knight is fine. When Li Shiqing asked the bodyguard why Song Jiayin hadn't come yet, I was shocked to hear this familiar name, and footsteps followed, and her familiar voice. Knight Seacham explains the baby's condition to her. Song Jiayin then put her heart down. Any minute now she sees me next to her and looks shocked, surprised I'm still alive. I sneer as if she's surprised I'm still alive. Only then did Song Jiayin realize she had said the wrong thing. He explained that I had suddenly disappeared and that he thought I was dead. He said that, but in his heart he didn't want Mo Ningxi and Li Shiqing to be connected. When I heard that I got cold feet for that dad, my own mother died and I'm still imagining that my dad loves me, it's ridiculous. At this point, Knight asked if we knew each other. Before I could say anything, Song Jiayin answered first. Shady, I'm her sister, I'm unmarried and pregnant. He looked at me and found it hard to believe that I was such a person. I looked at the distrustful gaze, but I didn't have to tell him that. Zhuozhua suddenly rushed out to protect me and countered with Song Jiayin. Song Jiayin mocked me for not only running away myself, but my children are also uneducated. Behind him, Li Si Cohen got up from the bed. Rebuttal to Song Jiayin. It was as if the 2 children were united in this moment, and I gently told Trisha not to talk to the bad guys and say goodbye to Sean Knight. I turned around and told Song Jiayin that I'd get what's mine back sooner or later. Song Jiayin looked at Mo Ningxi behind her with a sinister look. Song Jiayin complained to Li Shiqing in an aggravated manner. Li Shiqing turned his head to look at me, looking at me with skeptical eyes, seemingly not believing Song Jiayin's words. Knight Seacham got out of bed and begged me not to go. Hold on to my legs, I hope this will keep me from leaving. My heart ripples. No matter what happens, the child is innocent. I stroked Si Cohen's head. I'll see you some other time, okay? Song Jiayin, I am your mother. Holding my leg again and not wanting Song Jiayin to be her mother. When I saw Si Cohen's face, I suspected Song Jiayin had done something bad. Song Jiayin directly pulled Si Cohen's arm to pull him over. Si Cohen can't talk about mum like that, and twisted hard on Si Cohen's waist, staring viciously at Si Cohen, trying to make him cry out. I wondered why Song Jiayin had her hand on Si Cohen's waist. Si Cohen was pinched in pain and slapped Song Jiayin with his hand. When I was thinking, I heard Si Cohen's voice and immediately stepped forward to stop it. Seeing me come over, Song Jiayin's face revealed ferocity, as if she had thought of a plan. Just as I stepped forward to stop it, Song Jiayin let go of her hand. Luckily, I caught Si Cohen in time. I took Cohen in my arms and soothed him. Song Jiayin on the sidelines only thinks I'm just lucky. I reprimanded Night Seeker for not doing anything when his son was crying. He then proceeded to calm the anguished Si Cohen. When I think of this man with Song Jiayin, he must not be a good person. Li Shiqing felt helpless, hadn't even been angry yet he was being argued with. He sternly told Song Jiayin that no matter what happens you mustn't hurt the child. Song Jiayin commiserated that she was too eager, crouched down and apologized to Si Cohen, but it was clear that Si Cohen didn't want to talk to her. Li Shiqing tells Song Jiayin to go back as it seems his son doesn't want to see her. Seeing that she has to go by herself, Song Jiayin plans to pull me along with her. Li Shiqing's cold eyes seem to have told her to hurry up and leave. Then he asked the butler to take her away. Song Jiayin said goodbye to Night Seal's son with a dead heart. Then he closed the door and left. The two children felt that Night Seal is so powerful. I carried Si Cohen towards the bed. No more running around. Behind him, Li Shiqing felt slightly happy to see the scene. River told me the game was about to start. That's when it hit me. I'm in a hurry to get out of here. And Night Seal grabbed my wrist. It means he's sending us. Both kids agreed before I even said anything. Si Cohen also asked Li Shiqing to hurry up and send us off. Li Shiqing secretly thought that this kid knows what he's doing. The road is very crowded at this point. I was worried because I was going to be late. Li Shiqing got out of the car and took River with him, claiming they'd go first. I look surprised. He puts River around his neck. Dre is envious, he wants a father like that. The corridor of the hospital. Song Jiayin is back, looking at Si Cohen on the bed, holding a bowl of something unknown to Si Cohen, gloomily thinking that when the child is sick Night Seeker will let himself take care of him. I rush to the scene with Dreidel. Ask him where River is. Night told me about River's performance in a few minutes. I praise him for being a careful man. River is starting to perform. The judges were amazed at the first word. Li Shiqing asked me if River was so gifted. Did you find her a teacher? I've been abroad before, but I'm afraid she's too tired. I want to wait until she's old enough to make her own choices. And River on stage has finished her performance. Everyone in the room stood up and applauded River. River will run towards me from the lounge. Ask yourself how you sing. Zhuozhua stroked River's head and complimented River on how well she sang. I told them to say thank you to Night. The two children thanked Sean Knight. Li Shiqing smiled and indicated that there was no need to thank him. At that moment, Li Shiqing's phone rang. Night Seal looks at us to indicate a call. The call made Sean Knight shout, "I'm worried," and asked Night Seal what's wrong. Li Shiqing said he's going back to the hospital. I made it clear right away that we were going too. Night Seeker didn't expect us to follow. We'll be at the hospital in no time. When Li Shiqing just opened the door, Song Jiayin asked Li Shiqing to save Li Si Cohen. Li Shiqing shouted, "Get the best doctor. I've shown myself to be a healer, why don't I try?" Night Seeker looks to me for trust. Song Jiayin blocked the way. What if something happened to Si Cohen? I retorted, how could she know what I'd learn out there? I pushed him right out of the way. Displeasure also appeared on Li Shiqing's face. Ask the housekeeper why Song Jiayin is here. The housekeeper said Miss Song insisted on coming. Song Jiayin cried and explained to Li Shiqing. Night Seeker wasn't going to listen to her explanation. Song Jiayin immediately said nothing. I took Si Cohen's hand. I felt sorry for Si Cohen. 10 minutes later, I finished my treatment and had water and towels brought in. Si Cohen slumped on the edge of the bed and threw up. I reassured him that he'd be fine if he threw up. Wiped the corners of his mouth gently. I asked him how he was feeling. Li Shiqing got the idea to ask me to take care of Si Cohen. He asked me if I had a place to stay. I explained to him that I hadn't looked for an apartment yet. Si Cohen asked me to stay at his place. I stroked his head. "I'll visit you some other time." Li Shiqing directly asked me to be Si Cohen's nutritionist. I stared at him in disbelief. Chuqian asked if he could play with Cohen Z. Li Shiqing agreed immediately. Drexel also started to persuade me. Song Jiayin angrily argues with Li Shiqing. Si Cohen immediately identified her as the one who asked for his seafood soup. We looked at Song Jiayin with serious expressions. Night Seeker questioned him in anger, and Song Jiayin doesn't admit to what she did. Si Cohen says he's not lying. Li Shiqing told Si Cohen that he can't say anything without evidence. I defended him and offered to pull the surveillance. Dredd took out his computer next to him. River looked puzzled. Dredd hurriedly covered River's mouth. Li Shiqing immediately sent someone to retrieve the CCTV. Song Jiayin accuses Li Shiqing of not trusting her. Zhuozhua takes the computer and identifies Song Jiayin, and show Night Seal his own investigations. Night Seeker was puzzled. When seen, it was found that this is when hackers purchase heart tubing means. Surprised that purchase heart is a 5-year-old. The identification of Song Jiayin still requires an explanation. Song Jiayin rebutted that it was Zhuozhua who framed her. I did it on purpose, but Drexel says it's true. Night Seeker had her taken away. Ordered to stay away from Cohen. 2 bodyguards took Song Jiayin away immediately. This man invited me to his house. The 3 munchkins looked at me with equal anticipation. I look helpless. I had to say yes. When Mother Song saw her sad daughter, she immediately went up to her and asked, Sung Jiayin resented that I came back and met with them. The old woman walked over to her daughter and took her hand to comfort her. I got out of the shower thinking about getting breakfast ready. When I see a man, I say hello, but Knight Seacham pointed at my chest. I'm confused, puzzled. He looked down at his clothes. When she saw her chest, she hastily covered it with a towel, lamented that he was sick and rushed back to his room. The man laughed at the sight of me. It was quite funny. I stood in the doorway with a black face, constantly thinking about what men think of them. At that moment, the cute Sikoan rubbed his eyes and walked towards me. I squatted down and prepared to take Sikoan to wash up and then eat. The soft and cuddly Sikoan responded with a happy smile. Sikoan squeezed the toothpaste himself, looked to me to indicate that he was just fine, and asked me to check on the two of them. I touched the Sikoan and told him to take his time and call himself if he needed anything. I opened the door to see if they were awake. By now, the two of them have packed up and are playing on their own. The two of them were happy to see me and jumped into my arms. I'm glad my babies are good. It's good to have them at nights. In the little study, Sikoan drew me while thinking of a way to keep me at home. I looked at Sikoan's painting in amazement and couldn't stop praising it, but Sikoan reminded me not to tell Dad. I don't get it. He should be happy with a genius like that. Sikoan can't help that he's the heir to the Knight family and can't paint. That bad woman said all of Sikoan's paintings are rubbish. I frowned. Is the bad woman her mom Son Jiayin? I stroked Sikoan's head, reassuring him that he could go and convince Dad himself. Sikoan was happy and thanked him. The living room that night, I handed out Sikoan's painting to discuss this matter with him. Li Shiqing looked at his son's drawing with displeasure. He remembers talking to his son about it. Li Shiqing squeezed his son's painting tightly. Remind me that Sikoan is the heir to the Knight family, not a painter. I froze when I saw the man move, reaching out to grab Sikoan's painting and angrily denouncing his behavior. The man looked at me with a cold face and warned me to stay out of it. Sikoan went downstairs to find out the result, but I heard that my father still didn't approve of my drawing. Angrily, he asked his father why he didn't agree. While looking towards his angry son, the man reprimanded Sikoan for his rudeness. The boy yells that he hates his dad and doesn't agree with himself on anything. Then he ran upstairs crying. Myself, I wish I had a mom. Leaving the two of them staring at each other, I explained that painting doesn't take time. As a hobby then, the man interrupted me and told me to go to the study and talk to him. I'm glad. Did he say yes? Walking to the study, the man said he'd read my file. You're a design student. Draw a picture and hand me the book. I am secretly happy that I draw to his satisfaction is not able to teach Sikoan. Li Shiqing turned and spoke to acknowledge, sitting on the couch and looking over at me curious as to how far I could go. The man sits on one side and reads while I sit on the other side and draw. An hour later, I finished painting, closed the book and handed to Li Shiqing. Looking at his own portrait in the book, the man was taken aback. Secretly, I'm really good at drawing, and my skills are very solid. I went to Knight Sealsun's side and asked if I was good enough to teach Sikoan. The man turned his head to me and made a request. Looking at this man up close, I couldn't help but marvel at his impeccable looks. Sikoan's painting must be in the top 10. A man makes a shameless request, but I agree to it. I was about to explain, but the man stood up and interrupted me. Do you know why I'm where I am now? I thought about it for a moment, and what he said was true, so I promised to keep the man's word. He laughed, trying to teach his son a lesson to see how far I can go. Tomorrow, I'm dragging someone else's son to a painting show, but his grandmother saw it and reminded her of it. Son Jiayin was indignant that I could bring Sikoan out alone. The old woman hurriedly pulled her daughter and was ready to go up to the argument. I'm buying tickets for an exhibition with a little boy at the moment. At this time, the melon eaters on the sidelines immediately gathered together ready to eat melon. I laughed at the sight of the two men. They're such a bad match. When Sikoan saw the two of them, he hugged my thighs in fear. I froze for a moment and looked at the scared boy. Ripped them off for scaring the kids. Then he stroked the boy's head reassuringly, picked him up and got him ready to go to the painting show. The old woman took me by the shoulders and continued to accuse me falsely. What are you doing taking someone else's son shopping? The people immediately started to criticize me for being shameless. I put the boy down and comforted him. The little boy responded obediently and cheered me on. I turned to look at the old woman. You have the nerve to talk about me. Besides, my sister should know why I'm staying at the knight's house. Son Jiayin started messing around and refused to let me stay at the knight's house. And then, hypocritically, he reached out out to hug the boy. Unexpectedly, the boy shouted at her not to poison his mother. Upon hearing this, the crowd began to fall back on the two of us. Hearing the crowds talking, I began to worry about the boy getting attention, hurriedly steering away from the topic to start connoting old women. The old woman continued her sophistry, shouting back at me when the old woman didn't admit it. I laughed. I had proof, of course. The old woman panicked and tried to hit me with her hand. I grabbed her hand and continued to expose the old woman's shortcomings. You've always been in competition with your mother. Don't think you've won by taking away your father. Song Jiayin rushed to stand in front of her mother and started to accuse me falsely. I laughed. What a mother and daughter, they're exactly alike. Song Jiayin hurriedly called out for someone. The security guards from the mall came rushing in. Song Jiayin pointed at me and ordered the security guards to throw me out. The security guards saw this and showed a look of embarrassment. Song Jiayin started to threaten the security guards whether they still want to work or not. At that moment, Li Shiqing came over. Cold laugh. When hear you say forget it, the little boy ran happily to his father. I thought my dad must have a way to help me. The man gently picked up his son, reprimanding Song Jiayin for not acting like a mother. Song Jiayin hurriedly defended herself and put the problem on me. Li Shiqing gets impatient and warned Song Jiayin not to do it again. Song Jiayin hurriedly changed the topic to mention the dinner party. I thought he'd do what he promised. The man turned his head. Of course he'd do what he promised. Then come with us to the exhibition. The three left, leaving the heartthrob standing in place. She's the one who should be next to Sung. After the exhibition, I asked if I could take you to dinner. The man glanced at me. It's okay, but what are you going for? I was quick to explain, wondering if this was a yes. The man laughed. But honestly, we'll take you to buy a dress in a while. I was staring at a model in a dress shop for a long time, lamenting the fact that I used to come here often in college. But things have changed a long time ago. The waiter recognized me and said hello. Knight Seacham also came along and asked if he had a favorite. Seeing the two so close, the waiter started to gossip. I waved my hand and tried to explain, but he was interrupted by Man, who with a wave of his hand told the men to wrap up the latest model. I'll just stop it in a hurry and ask for one. A man can't be questioned. Next time you buy from, it's too much of a hassle. I froze next time. Seeing this, the man had to loosen up. Okay, try this one. In the fitting room, looking at the price of the clothes, I was worried for a moment, but when I saw myself in the dress, I immediately felt better. I changed my dress and walked out. Stunned this man. My unique temperament and elegant dress is a perfect match. The man handed the waitress a black card and asked her to wrap it all up. I rushed to discourage the man, afraid of waste. The man raised eyebrows. Will be used. Want to make me happier? The Li family saw Jiayin carrying a cup of hot milk to see Si Koen. Si Koen vigilantly opened the door. Beware of Song Jiayin. Song hypocritical squatting. Mother is here to apologize to you. Si Koen did not believe it. Slammed the door shut. Song Jiayin face gloomy. Damned and Ning same. Suddenly a voice came angrily. Song Jiayin up the stairs. Did not say not to let you into the Li family. Butler who let her in. Song Jiayin quickly explained. Li Shiqing cold-faced to look at the disappointing Song Jiayin. Song Jiayin is still accusing me of keeping her and Si Koen apart. Li Shiqing turned his head and told me to go back to my room to clean up. Song Jiayin gloomy look at my back leaving. The eyes show a few threads of ruthlessness. Saw me leave. Li Shiqing loudly rebuked Song Jiayin disrespectful to me. The uneducated behavior of Si Koen has a bad influence, said, snapped his fingers to let the housekeeper, dismissed the security guards to send Song Jiayin out of the house. Song Jiayin panicked and hastily admitted her mistake and let him go to the dinner party. Li Shiqing smiled, of course, but he will bring another person. My room. The two little ones are around my dress. Praise. River asked me if I wanted to go to the party with Uncle Lee. I admitted and told the two to get along well with Si Koen. Seeing me admit it, the two kids looked at each other with a tacit understanding. In the living room, I told the three to listen to the housekeeper at home. The three children responded happily. I look at Li Shiqing satisfied. Let's go! Li Shiqing looks at me and thinks that I am indeed more popular with the children than Song Jiayin. The people in Mo's living room were talking about the two of us. I'm glad. I didn't expect it to go so well. They'll be shocked. Then Mo's father and Song Jiayin came down and asked about their marriage. Suddenly, Song felt uneasy and dealt with Mo's father. Song Jiayin saw me and felt bad. Why did Seacham bring me here? Someone downstairs recognized me and wondered if I was dead. I explained to the crowd that it was a misunderstanding, but Dad should be very happy. Mo's father and his wife walked towards me with their own agenda. agenda and greeted me hypocritically. Mo's father didn't move on the surface, began to act. Where have you been? Looking for you for a long time. I laughed at, is it that cousin how to become your daughter? Mo's father panicked and hastened to argue that he had no choice but to announce his death. I'm aggressive at Son Jiayin. What's going on? The people began to talk about the Mo family again. Son Jiayin, disgusted contempt for the crowd is really a wallflower, began to accuse me of not questioning my father, then looked at Li Shiqing, guessed that he was angry to bring me. I denied that I was just on my way with Li Shiqing, said striding towards Son Jiayin, reminding her that I'm the daughter of a rich family. You can't pretend. Son Jiayin cursed herself for not being as good as me. Without me, she's just a rich girl. I cold-faced to look at the impotent and furious Son Jiayin. This is the side of the Li Shiqing remind me not to be too excited. I sighed, looked up and smiled at Li Shiqing to show him that I'm fine. Li Shiqing reminded Mo's father to change the environment and catch up with me. Mo's father thought that Li Shiqing was trying to help his daughter out and hurriedly told me to go. I was puzzled to look at Li Shiqing what he meant. Looking at the back of the two Li Shiqing dark line to give you a chance. You can do that step. Langli Mo father showed his true colors and began to question me. I laughed at Son Jiayin, did not tell him that I temporarily live in the Li family. I came back to ask him, heritage good use will not have nightmares. I thought I should let Son Jiayin do cleaner. I laughed at him in a hurry and asked him to quickly clean up my house. Raised his head to look coldly at Mo father, otherwise he must let him regret it. I came down after half an hour and everyone praised me for looking good. Son Jiayin's best friend but fought for Son Jiayin, turned towards me and shouted, said I ruined other people's happiness. Shame on me. I froze for a moment and turned my head to look at Li Shiqing. Was I wrong about Son Jiayin's wishful thinking? Li Shiqing glanced at me, unexpectedly wrapped his arm around my shoulders. No intention of. Heard Li Shiqing words. Girlfriend's dissatisfaction began to rebuke Li Shiqing. Li Shiqing cold-faced to look at her. You were teaching me to do things. Turned his head to look at me. Let's go. Almost started. I look at Son Jiayin's girlfriends with a speechless face. Sneer next time out of the head to figure out the original. Finished walking to Li Shiqing's side, wondering how Son Jiayin got pregnant. See Li Shiqing angry girlfriend quickly apologized to Son Jiayin. Son Jiayin on the surface of the comfort in the heart scolded the girlfriend stupid. 18 Entering the auction, the host announced that the first item is the shares of Rong's company. I face black down how they have the face to auction this. See my eyes. Li Shiqing asked me whether I want to buy. I knew I couldn't afford it, so I refused. The crowd began to shout from 1 million. I really can't afford it. At this time Li Shiqing raised 3 million. The man bought something for me but I scolded the man for being crazy. The man laughed and I was happy. Son Jiayin took the transfer book to let Li Shiqing sign. You are so good, half of the money we will donate to the Hope Project. Li Shiqing signing. Want to make an appointment to buy Rong's. Son Jiayin face is excited. Really? Suddenly I stood up. The acquisition of Young's. What does this mean? He will not use this way to send money to Mo's father. Right. See me get up. Li Shiqing hastened to care about. I cold face here, uncomfortable outside waiting for you. Self-compassion is not what you think. I was worried sitting outside. Sighed. What to do? See me. Li Shiqing wondered what happened to me. Walked towards me and wanted to take me away. I came back to my senses and agreed. Two people sitting in the car in the garage. Li Shiqing is not happy that I am losing my temper with him. I said no perfunctorily. Li Shiqing impatient. Then what are you doing? Give me a face. I looked out the window indifferently. Nothing to say. Li Shiqing cold-faced to warn me not to cross the line. The car on the road. I comforted myself. Yes. What he did and what does it have to do with me? The door of the Li family. I cold-face out of the car and walked into the house. Li Shiqing do not understand. This temper is inexplicable. Good intentions to help her but in exchange for this. Slammed the car door. I came to see Kuan room. Want to see him. Only to see the three people in a bed is sleeping incense. Lamenting the relationship between the three to quite good. Then touched Kuan C and told him to grow up to be better than his father. Suddenly I saw Xiaozhua's computer is still on. Rushed to the computer but saw the screen Knight's personal data. Shut down the computer. Do not understand the Xiaozhua practice. I thought to myself that I would have to teach him not to do this some other day. The next day a few people downstairs. Li Shiqing Shiqing smiled in greetings, but unexpectedly I directly ignored him, turned towards the kitchen. Li Shiqing, a burst of embarrassment. This temper is also too big. It. 3 people see the atmosphere is not right to help us. The room. Siko, helpless father, never coaxed people. Miao Miao asked Li Shiqing to buy beautiful clothes for him. Xiao Zhua thought of letting Li Shiqing take me shopping, but Siko said that Li Shiqing is very busy. It is impossible to go. At this time Xiao Zhua put his arm around the shoulders of Siko. You can be pampered. Siko is still hesitant to do this. Miao Miao, happy to remind me of the soft heart, will certainly agree first. Then I walked into the room to see the 3 people talking, curious about what the 3 are talking about. Walked behind the 3. I can know what secrets you say. Siko signaled Xiao Zhua to take him to see the computer. Then the 2 of them quickly left. At this time, Miao Miao interjected that she wanted to eat watermelon. In the living room to see me come, Li Shiqing spoke, just like this to consume, but I ignored him, overestimating his ability to put down distractions. See 2 people and a piece of Xiao Zhua hastened to urge Siko. Siko is still hesitant to do so. Can it work? Xiao Zhua angrily knocked Siko's head. If you want the 2 of them to be together, then go. Lien Kuan quickly agreed, complaining that Xiao Zhua hit his brother. Siko running. I quickly remind Kuan to slow down running. Kuan ran to his father's side, responded to me that he was fine, looked to his father and wanted him to go to the mall to buy himself new clothes, but Li Shiqing said he was not available. Let the housekeeper to go to buy. Siko turned around and saw that I was still there and immediately burst into tears, crying and looking at Li Shiqing, begged his father to buy clothes for himself. I immediately softened my heart and promised Siko while complaining about Li Shiqing. Li Shiqing looked at me with interest, not angry, but can go. Stood up and looked to the 2 trouble me and him to buy clothes. Siko doubt this is true. I despise raised his eyes to Li Shiqing. You are not free. At this time, Siko cheered for his father. I'll help you here. Li Shiqing explained that if he went by himself, he would just move the new money. Siko pitifully begged me to help him. I hastened to agree. Our conflicts do not need to involve the child. See, the 2 agreed to. Siko happy shouted out, excitedly ran to Xiao Zhua too. Li Shiqing understood the intention of a few people, laughed. They are quite clever. Children's clothing shop. I first went in to pick clothes. Looking at me, Li Shiqing puzzled. This woman really inexplicable. I opened my mouth and asked the waiter to wrap up the clothes, but Li Shiqing asked the waiter to wrap those up. The waiter was very happy. Yes, sir, madam. When I heard madam, I quickly waved my hand to deny it, but Li Shiqing smiled and accepted it. I looked back at Li Shiqing. I'll buy their clothes myself. Li Shiqing explained that they are in the Li family. They should have new clothes. Came to my ear. Are you sure you buy your own? I looked at the price of the clothes, instantly stunned. They really cannot afford to buy. Pretending to calm down. You can buy, but buy a little less. Li Shiqing smiled. Of course, your designer's vision will not be bad. The Li family Siko do not understand why Xiao Zhua investigated his father's information. Xiao Zhua explained that he suspected that both of them have the same father, and then began to research Li Shiqing 5 years ago, whether he had seen me. After a long time, Siko began to yawn. In the end is not at all. Xiao Zhua is not sure, only know that Li Shiqing 5 years ago to talk about business. Then Cao reminded Xiao Zhua to check my affairs 5 years ago, to see if the 2 of us appear in the same place is not on the line. Xiao Zhua happily hugged the clever Siko. He will soon have a father. On the other hand, I was still complaining about the amount of clothes Li Shiqing bought. The waiter put the clothes on the car. Okay, sir and ma'am. I was speechless and hurriedly denied it, but Li Shiqing was defending the waiter. I looked at Li Shiqing with disgust. I don't want to get involved with him. Then got into the car and slammed the door. Li Shiqing helpless. This joke also cannot be said. I got into the car and kept thinking about Rong's business. Li Shiqing inquired about what I was thinking about. I blurted out, thinking about whether you will sell Youngs to me. Snapped back to God, this guy even said my words. Really machine. Li Shiqing but directly agreed to down. I'm not sure, asked again. You really sell, but I can only buy a part. Li Shiqing turned his head to look at me. Agreed to a condition to give you. I was determined, as long as it's not illegal. Li Shiqing interrupted me. It's not too much to ask for you, right? I quickly raised my hand. Too much, I'm not that kind of person. Li Shiqing speechless. He just let me at home to take care of Cohen. I put down the heart. So do not say I will also take care of the two awkwardly sitting in the car silence. The secretary came to remind Li Shiqing that his brother was here. Li Shiqing let him in while wondering what he was doing here. His brother flirted with the secretary and asked her to add him as a friend. The secretary quickly found an excuse to go out. Li Shiqing reminds his brother not to harass his staff, but his brother argued that he did it because his family was pushing him to get married. He now runs away from home and asks Li Shiqing to take him in, but Li Shiqing changed his attitude and refused to take him in. See, big brother does not agree with the younger brother. Anxious. Why? Is it true that you abandoned Song Jiayin, the golden house, to hide a girl? The man had no choice but to agree, warning him not to mess around. Brother happy up. To ensure that he is definitely a good role model, the man had no choice but to hope that his brother wouldn't cause any trouble. Back home, Li Chengxing happy towards Si Cohen unexpectedly, but saw me playing with 3 people. He began to complain that I returned to China without saying anything to him. I explained that I had something to do and didn't want to bother others. Chengxing smiled and looked at me with a sincere face. He was willing to trouble him. Miao Miao was upset that Uncle Chengxing also liked her mother. 3 people quickly determined to let Li Shiqing and I together. The housekeeper reminded Li Shiqing that his brother was talking to me. Li Shiqing looks at the housekeeper and wonders, do they know each other? Turning his head, he saw his brother holding my hand. Immediately angry up, what are you doing? Pull away his hand, roar. You are so do role model. My brother quickly explained that he and I have long been friends. Li Shiqing turned his head to look awkwardly at the 3 little one. I also stood up to explain to Li Shiqing, did not expect the 2 will meet again. My younger brother agreed that we were destined to meet again. At this time, my brother proposed to send me to work tomorrow, but I refused. Looking at the happy me, Li Shiqing face gloomy. I talked to him how not to smile, then turned around and silently went upstairs. Into the room, closed the door with force. Hearing the sound of 2 people cannot help but lament the temper of the Li Shiqing. The 3 little ones expected that Li Shiqing is jealous of the Miao Miao. Helpless adults can be really complicated. Just coaxed his mother. Li Shiqing angry again. At this time Xiao Zhuo turned his head to look at Li Chengxing. He felt that Uncle Chengxing do their own father is also quite good. Si Kun suddenly put his arm around Xiao Zhuo and reminded him that he can't have second thoughts. Seeing the difference between the 2, I came over to remind them not to fight. Xiao Zhuo hurriedly explained that they were not fighting but just fooling around. Then he turned his head and hinted to River to help. River would tell me she was sleepy and wanted to go to bed. I picked up River and told Cow to get ready for bed, but Xiao Zhuo said he was sleeping with his brother and asked me to go to bed with River. Hearing this, I hesitated. At this time, Li Chengxing came to me and asked me to go to rest, and he took Si Kun with him. I had to agree to it and told Si Kun to be obedient. I said I would carry Miao Miao up the stairs. Seeing me leave, Li Chengxing asked Xiao Zhuo the chances of being his father. Xiao Zhuo looked at each other. Si Kun hurriedly pulled Xiao Zhuo to run away. Li Chengxing then began to wonder the attitude of the big brother is different. Is it that the next morning, everyone sat around the table to eat. I finished eating and wiped my mouth. Today to go to work, let a few people get along and listen to the housekeeper. I reminded Cao Si that his body has just recovered and be good at home. Si Kun also responded happily. At this time, Li Chengxing interjected, marrying a wife should marry like me. I smiled and reminded him to cheer up, and left first. But Li Shiqing opened his mouth and said he would see me off. I refused, wondering if he would actually offer to take me to work. But Li Shiqing got up and reminded me not to waste his time. Seeing him walk out the door, I hurriedly followed him. Li Chengxing was puzzled that his elder brother had never been like this before. Sitting in the car, I felt hot and reminded Li Shiqing to turn on the air conditioning. Li Shiqing reached out to turn on the air conditioner, but he opened the sunroof and I reminded him to do so. Li Shiqing quickly explained that he had accidentally pressed the wrong button. I looked at Li Shiqing and asked him if he was jealous. Li Shiqing averted his eyes and said I took myself too seriously. After that, he quickly approached me. I was taken aback by Li Shiqing's behavior. Unexpectedly, Li Shiqing just wanted to help me fasten my seatbelt and laughed at me a little. I quickly reassured myself that it was nothing, that he was the one who was humiliated. At that moment, Li Shiqing came to my ear and whispered, what if he was really jealous? face. I quickly and angrily pushed Night Seal Sun out of the way. It's none of my business, remind him to drive, I'm late. Li Shiqing laughed, and I didn't dare to flirt with him anymore. Several people in the company are discussing angrily about me parachuting into the company, and Caning looked indignant and said I might be a vase with a backstage and go to work. That's when I walked into the office and headed over to the crowd. The leader introduced me to the crowd, and I happily greeted them. And Caning was furious when she saw me and couldn't believe I came here to be the deputy editor. I laughed, what an enemy. The leader on the sidelines wondered if we knew each other before. I looked at her and explained that I'd only met her in passing, that I didn't know her, and Caning started to accuse me, saying that I could come to work for the company without a degree, falsely accusing me of running away with someone and disappearing for 5 years. The crowd bought it. It's disgusting to think of a man of my moral turpitude as their boss. The leader shouted to the crowd to stop and keep quiet. What is this like? Seeing the leader's anger, they all bowed their heads and did their own work. The leader turned his head to me to convince me otherwise I was unfit for the position. I took a step forward. Remind the crowd that it's against the law to spread rumors and my English name is Leah. Song Jiayin's best friend is all indignant and thinks I'm faking it. At that moment an employee on the sidelines looked up my information and shouted in surprise, handing her mobile phone to Caning to remind her that she's kicked the can down the road. Looking at my lucrative degree on my phone, Song Jiayin's best friend was in disbelief. How is this possible? That's when I asked if the crowd had changed their minds about me and if I could do the job. The leader rushed to round up the situation, just kidding around, and said that he took me to office. Song Jiayin's best friend looked at me sinisterly and tried to kick me out of the company. The company's receptionist. Song Jiayin was trying to trouble the receptionist to find Caning. At this time, Caning came out and saw Song Jiayin and wanted to talk to her about something. Song Jiayin ostensibly inquired what was the matter, worrying the delay of his set photo shooting, and Shannon hastily denied, telling her that I had become the deputy editor of their department. Song Jiayin is indignant and shouts, "What right do I have?" He looked at me and pretended to say that our grudge is between us. Don't involve Caning. The staff on the sidelines were puzzled, discussing our side of the story. I laughed and told Song Jiayin that her set today was cancelled. Song Jiayin was anxious and accused me of not having the right to decide this matter. I announced that I would not allow any lending of resources that did not comply with company rules. Caning provokes. Song Jiayin's makeup photo has been scheduled. Everyone knows that. The staff agreed that it would be a waste of the company's resources if they didn't go to the film. Song Jiayin is happy, since the appointment has been made and the people are here. It's not good. I laughed and reminded the two that I don't distinguish between public and private. Warning: Shannon's makeup photo shoot today was for a big name star chosen for a magazine cover. Look at the staff. Is it a waste of photographic resources to have a photo of such a person cancelled? Song Jiayin blocked her best friend at this point and started to ruin my reputation. Disgruntled, she looked at the crowd that had left. How could she discredit me when they were all gone? I warned her to stop screaming. I have something to tell you. The villa you're living in is mine. You have 3 days to get out of it. Song Jiayin panicked and argued that it was given to him by Mo Yongkong. She wouldn't give it to. I remind you that my grandfather left it to himself. So if you don't move it, I'll be damned. Caning was anxious, told me not to be complacent, that I would be punished for what I had done. I smiled. Song Jiayin should really be happy that Caning doesn't know her true colors. Song Jiayin started putting on airs to warn me that I shouldn't talk about her friends. 2 security guards rushed to stop them when they saw something wrong, controlling Song Jiayin. Seeing this, Caning rushed forward to stop the security guard looked at me for an idea. I told them to kick her out. Making a scene is bad for the company. Next time don't let her in. Caning's face was grim. I never thought that you would really dare to do this. Ancien walked into a room and slammed the door behind her, thinking that you can't do it alone. You want to unite everyone to get rid of me. On the other hand, I came home from work and breathed a long sigh of relief. When saw me coming back, Li Chengxing hurriedly came forward and explained why he didn't pick me up. I gave him a perfunctory "I'm tired. Leave me alone," and walked away. When Li Shiqing returned, the housekeeper greeted him and reported that dinner would be ready soon. Night Seal Sun saw me, who just came home with my bag. Asked the housekeeper if I've just come back too. This moment, Li Chengxing walked over to me with a fruit plate and asked me to eat something first. Li Shiqing looked at Li Chengxing, who gave me the fruit plate with dissatisfaction, angrily rebuking Li Chengxing and telling him to leave tonight. Li Chengxing was helpless. He had only been here for a day and then he was kicked out. Li Shiqing made the excuse that he was too noisy and would disturb the children's studies. Li Chengxing hurriedly explained that I had accompanied them all day today. 3 persons stood on the stairs and looked at the others. Si-kun still want me to be his mother, but River was so smitten. She couldn't bear to part with either of them if they were so handsome. Li Shiqing lowered his head to ask Si-kun little uncle whether there is tutoring study. Li Chengxing reminding Si-kun to tell him to learn and take them to play the game next time. Si-kun, however, told his father with a firm face that Uncle Junior had taken them to play a game. Li Shiqing turned his head to look at Li Chengxing with an angry face. Li Chengxing wanted to cry. It wasn't like this when he was playing at that time. Li Shiqing smiled and looked at Si-kun, really his good son. Turning to look at Li Chengxing with a cold face, he told him to pack up and leave, but Li Chengxing suddenly held Li Shiqing's hand and begged him to stay another night at least. At this point I laughed out loud as I watched the 2 men from the couch off to the side. The 2 men turned their heads to my side in confusion, standing up and walking over to the 2 men lamenting how good their brotherly bond is. Open your mouth and plead for Li Chengxing. It's already late. Let him stay. Finished reminding the 3 on the stairs to study after dinner tonight. At night, when I saw Night Seal's son come down, I wondered if he'd just finished his work. Night Seeker nodded. Afterwards the 2 stood speechless and awkwardly for a while. I spoke to break the silence. It's getting late, I'll go back to rest first. At that moment, Li Shiqing called me from behind. Keep me away from his sleazy brother. I froze for a moment. Was he concerned about me? I left and said goodnight, but Li Shiqing is suffering from my reaction. Could it be that I really like Li Chengxing? Li Shiqing pressed on me and asked me what my relationship with Li Chengxing was. I pushed Night Seal-sun away. Of course it's a friend, otherwise what? Night Seechum grabbed my hand. So what are you and I've been dreaming in bed. Wake up with a start and realize you're dreaming. I wonder why I've been dreaming about him lately. In the morning, sitting on the couch, Night Seal asked if he wanted to take me to work. Remembering last night's dream, I hastily refused. I could just take the metro myself. After saying that, he hurried towards the door. Night Seeker was wondering if I was avoiding him. Chengxing came downstairs to ask his big brother if I was leaving. He was still about to send me off. Li Shiqing replied that he left long ago and asked Li Chengxing to come home today. Seeing Big Brother like this, Li Chengxing can see that Big Brother really cares about me. He just doesn't realize it yet. I walked into the office and saw some people discussing something. Walking into the office and seeing the whole office in disarray. Seeing the balloons in front of the camera, I thought I couldn't find out anything. Walking outside to ask Ancien to come to our office for a moment. At that moment, a staff member spoke up and warned Channing to be careful. And Channing thought I was going to talk about the office and reminded me not to accuse anyone. Instead, I threw a wad of paper on the table. I don't care about that. Pointing to the paperwork reminded her the design she submitted to Fashion Week had been called back. And Shannon looked at her manuscript incredulously. I warned her that if she wanted to continue to participate she should redraw them herself. And Choi Nim got anxious and started to argue loudly. That's when I took out the original and warned her to change it or we'd go public. Smiling, he gave her his office. The crowd outside lamented that I had one again. It's so great to be able to bend the rules. I was in the middle of something when my phone rang. The editor-in-chief sent a message asking himself and another editor-in-chief to go to dinner. 6 o'clock in the evening. I walked into the room thinking this should be it. Walked into the room to see Mr. Wang but unexpectedly saw Song Jiayin secretly sighing badly. Song Jiayin approached Mr. Wang and told him I was the designer. Mr. Wang invited me to sit down with a dirty look on his face. I made it to my seat with all the discomfort I could muster. Directly into the main topic of Mr. Wang, indicating that you want to shoot with Mr. Wang's magazine, he said, handing the magazine in his hand to Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang touched my hand when he picked up the magazine. He's got a dirty look on his face and he wants me to sleep with him. I slapped Mr. Wang's hand in disgust and the magazine instantly fell off. He knocked over the teacup on the table and splashed Mr. Wang all over. I smiled in embarrassment, embarrassed that my hand had slipped. Song Jiayin hurriedly grabbed a tissue to help him wipe his clothes. He reproached me that Mr. Wang's clothes weren't cheap and asked me to have a drink to make amends. I laughed when I saw Song Jiayin pouring me a drink, still playing old trick from 5 years ago. Putting the red wine aside, he picked up a nearby teacup. I said sorry to Mr. Wang with my cup of tea. Just drink your tea. Song Jiayin and the two of them looked at each other with a bad smile on their faces. I got up and told the two men I was going to the bathroom. Seeing me leave, Song Jiayin laughed. I'm being smart and being clever. Looking at General Manager Wang, the MO will support his investment after the matter is completed. Turning around with a sinister look on his face. Let's see how I can escape today. I stood in front of the door and knew that Mr. Wang was a hard man to get hold of. Just push the door open and walk in, or find an excuse to leave if you can't. Suddenly I feel like I'm getting dizzy. Mr. Wang came to my side and tried to help me to go back to my room to take a rest. I stumbled ahead, but Mr. Wang followed at a leisurely pace. I looked at my mobile phone that was about to switch off in less than 3 seconds of battery life. Eventually he couldn't hold on any longer and fell heavily to the ground. Mr. Wang looked at me with an evil face. See how I can still run away. Picked me up and lewdly approached me and told me to stop struggling and go with him. I pushed open a door next to me thinking this is the only chance I'll get. Yell for help from inside. At that moment, Li Shiqing came over to hold me and wondered why I was here. Seeing Li Shiqing, Mr. Wang panicked I'm his man. Li Shiqing's stern gaze swept over General Manager Wang to tell him to get lost. Mr. Wang quickly bowed to Li Shiqing and then rolled away. Looking at me, Night Seeker guessed that I was being counted on, gushing at a few people in the room. He said you guys carry on and left first. A few people in the room looked puzzled but responded. Seeing Big Brother holding a woman, Li Chengxing wondered if it was me. Night Seal carries me back to the Night family home. The butler greeted me and asked me how I was doing. Li Shiqing asked the butler to pour a glass of water and asked if the children were asleep. The butler nodded and asked again where I was resting. Li Shiqing carried me upstairs and told me to sleep in the other guest room, so not to disturb them. Night Seeker carried me into the room. I said it was hard. Night Seechum laid me on the bed and asked me gently where I was suffering. I opened my eyes blankly and called his name. Sit up and tell him not to go. Night Seeker froze for a moment. I threw myself into Night Seal's arms and wondered why he always made my heart beat out of balance. Night Seal hurriedly opened his arms to remind me of A. I grabbed him by the tie and provoked him for not letting on that he'd been jealous. After saying that, he kissed it, feeling that this dream was real. Li Seechum tackled me to the bed and reminded me I had made my own choice and I couldn't regret it. The butler stood at the door with the water. He'd better not go in and disturb the. Suddenly I thought of that Mr. Wang and woke up with a start. Instead, Night Seeker patted me on the shoulder and told me I was fine. Feeling him beside me, I suddenly froze. At the table I ate meal quickly. Shiqing handed me a cup of soya milk and asked me if I wanted some. River happily thanked Li Shiqing on the sidelines. She my favorite soya bean milk. Li Shiqing looked gently at Miao Miao, telling him to eat his breakfast and grow up. Xiao Zhua and Si Kuan both felt something was wrong and glanced at each other in silent agreement. I'll leave after dinner and keep a few people in line. Li Shiqing wanted to give me a lift but I refused. Night Seal, who was rejected, thought I was too easily shy, which was kind of cute. The three of them stared at Li Shiqing expectantly. Li Shiqing was stared at helplessly. At that moment, Si Kuan came to his father and asked him if I could be his mother, and that he and I get along well and I don't mind him. Li Shiqing touched Si Kuan's head. You think I don't deserve her? At this point, Si Kuan began to list Li Shiqing's shortcomings. Lixi Heng, who had lost face, stood up and told him to stay out of this. After that, he turned around and left. The two of them are now sure that Night Seal Sun likes me in his heart. Si Kuan asks if it's time to carry out his plan. Chloe took both of them by the hand and quickly assigned the tasks. I walked into work still thinking about yesterday. Looking at the clean office, I was glad that Enchaining knew what she was doing. Sitting on the chair thinking about moving out of the Night family when seeing is better. Suddenly I saw the papers on the table. Seeing as this is a list of clients and thinking about yesterday's incident. Slamming the information on the table, I knew Song Jiayin was up to the same old tricks. When I walked out of the office, and Channing and the others were talking about me. I've warned a few people that if they don't stop gossiping at work, they'll be fired. But Enchannon started to accuse me loudly about last night. Take out the photos you took on your phone last night. I laughed and reminded him that I was with Sean Knight all night yesterday. And Channing started to ask me why I'm with Li Shiqing again. I laughed. I live in the Knight's house, and Song Jiayin got there before me that day. And Channing got anxious and said I'm talking nonsense. Song Jiayin doesn't know my clients. Raise your hand to shut me up. I grabbed her hand. Raising her hand and slapping her hard across the face to warn her of her nonsense. The employee, who was shocked by me, hurriedly disassociated himself and went back to work, and caning covered her face and told me not to be so proud. Mr. Lee wouldn't look at someone like me. I laughed anyway. He's not interested in you and Song Jiayin. And Channing called Song Jiayin to tell her about today's incident. Song Jiayin was in disbelief. Could something have changed? Rushed to call Mr. Wang, but there was no answer. Now Song Jiayin panicked. What's going on? On the other side, Li Shiqing has asked his subordinates to buy out Mr. Wang's company. Hearing his subordinates' affirmative reply, Li Shiqing breathed a sigh of relief. That way I shouldn't have to follow through. I came home from work. The three of them were sitting together watching cartoons. When I came back, I grabbed my hand and said I worked hard. I looked at the well-behaved ones and replied, I'm not tired. Asked Chook where the pink USB stick I left with him earlier is. When I heard the answer, I reminded a few people to cut down on their snacks and went upstairs. Si-kun was puzzled by the flash drive. What do I need that for? Thinking of the contents of the flash drive, Xiaozhua smiled. Those things I finally came in handy. Excitedly looking at Si-kun. Anyway, I know someone who's going to be unlucky soon. I stood on the balcony and called Young Zi to ask her if she was enjoying her inheritance, but Young Zi was still playing the fool. I told her I'd pick it up tomorrow and hung up. If I didn't take the initiative, they'd think I'm a bully. Young Zi is still angry that I threatened her, but she's forgotten what happened back then. At that moment, the servant reminded Rong Zi that her nephew, Rong Yu, was here. Rong Zi hurriedly let him in. He still doesn't know the truth and hates me. Seeing her nephew coming, Rong Zi hurriedly pretended to be aggrieved. Young Yu rushed forward and asked what was wrong with her. Rong Zi explained that I had come back and he still thought that she had killed his mother. When he heard I was back, Rong Yu was shocked and asked where I was. Rong Zi told him I was at the Lee's home, falsely accusing me of sabotaging Song Jiayin and Mr. Lee. Rong Yu was furious and said he'd intervene to put Rong Zi's mind at ease. Rong Zi is still pretending to plead for me, advising him not to be impulsive. Seeing the door closed, Rong Zi said that this time, he got two birds with one stone, and that little Yu is a good pawn. Young Zi commanded everyone to put away the valuable things. At this time, the subordinate came to tell Rong Zi that I broke in. Young Zi scolded them for being useless and ordered them to get more men to stop me. I came in and put away my sword and asked Young Zi why he was stopping me. Young Zi was in a panic and was still arguing that he hadn't seen my belongings. I walked towards Young Zi. I looked around. Everything in this house was mine. I asked Young Zi if she's been living in this house for the past few years. Rong Zi watched grimly as the people moved things, thinking that good things cannot be left to me, smiled at me hypocritically and told me to ask Mok Wing Hong. I pointed to the people and questioned her about what was going on with those people. Young Zi can't ask anything without pretending. I got angry and picked up a vase of flowers. He slammed on the ground to warn Rong Zi. Rong Zi couldn't hold it in. He called me crazy, but this is priceless. I obviously don't believe her. At this time Rong Zi looked away. It's impossible to let me know where the real thing is. I suddenly grabbed Rong Zi's arm, put a knife in her face and warned her to speak quickly, but Young Zi started to play the fool and said he didn't know anything. I put the tip of the knife against Rong Zi's chin, but Rong Zi threatened to keep me out of the Mo family. I looked at her with a fierce look on my face. How dare you? Raised the knife to stab her in the face. Rong Zi looked at his men with a grim look of resentment that they didn't come to help. That's when I started checking the numbers. Rong Zi panicked and smiled, asking me to put down the knife and talk. I checked another number and used the knife to gesture at her face. Rong Zi couldn't take it anymore and had to compromise. Turn around and have the stuff brought out. A box was carried out. I knelt down to make sure it was Mom's suitcase. I opened the case and questioned Young Zi should not be so little. Remind her that it's just interest, and tell her to hand over the rest quickly, otherwise, I'd have my own lawyer come in. Turn around and tell the underlings to take the stuff to the car. After saying that, he left with his man. Rong Zi looked at me with a sinister look on her face. She'll find me to settle the score sooner. Outside the Young's house, I'm sitting in the car wondering where they hid it. Suddenly I saw two men sneaking around carrying a sack. I realized something was wrong with these two. He followed them and listened to them. I was shocked to hear about the man in the sack. The two threw the sack down and told him to fend for himself and left. See the two of them leave. I rushed towards the sack. unraveled and saw a dying man. We're taking him to the hospital. In the hospital, I handed the nurse a card and told her to call me if she needed anything. The nurse happily took it and reassured me. I walked out of the ward thinking he'd be grateful to me. Lee's family, Lee Seal-sung, saw that I was late to come back and looked at his mobile phone wearily. I went back to my parents and breathed a sigh of relief. Night Seeker walked towards me, worriedly accusing me of not coming home and not calling. I explained that I had saved someone and didn't have time to. Night Seechum reminded me to call next time the kids are worried. I leaned in close and asked if he was concerned about me. Lee Shiching wrapped his arms around my waist, questioning me if I couldn't do it. I hurriedly pushed Night Seeker away from me, keeping him at a distance. After saying that, he went upstairs and prepared to go back to his room to rest. Lee Shiching reminded me that Song Jiayin is not qualified to say anything. What am I afraid of? I just stopped for a second. Yeah. What's wrong with me? I haven't thought it through yet. Good night. Lee Shiching depressed sitting on the sofa. His first initiative was rejected like this. I walked into Mock's company. The receptionist was still stopping me under the pretext of a meeting. I got to the place just as they were breaking up the meeting. The receptionist hurriedly explained to Mock that she couldn't stop me from barging in. I asked Mock Winghong to give me back what my grandpa and mum left me. Mo Fu got anxious and said I'm talking nonsense and throwing tantrums. This is not the place for me. I started to greet the crowd uncles and aunts. Long time no see, do you know the Young family? Mock Winghong panicked and took my hand and asked me to follow him there. Before leaving, I told everyone to go about their business according to the plan. In Mock Winghong's office, Mock Winghong began to rebuke me for what I wanted. I just want what's mine, and you're going to give it back to me no matter what. Mock Winghong is in a hurry. He doesn't know what relics I'm talking about. I gave him an ultimatum. I'll see him in court if he doesn't pay for all that he's taken. Mock Winghong was trembling with anger, pointing at me and telling me to get out of here. I'm speechless. I thought he didn't think of me as his own daughter either. At this time the secretary came in to bring Mo Yongkong tea, but he saw Mock Winghong fainted on the ground. Hurriedly have someone call 120. Can't move Mo Yongkong indiscriminately. I looked coldly at the panicked people in front of me. At that moment, Night Seal came and reminded me that the situation was not very friendly to me, and I wondered why he was here. Looking at him speechlessly, it can't be that he's here to help Mo Yongkong. Turned around and left quickly. He went wherever he liked. Lee Shiching then realized that I seemed to be angry again. I've got a bunch of reporters outside asking me questions. I made it clear to them that one more word about my children and I would never let them go. A group of reporters were instantly silenced. I realized this had been set up. It looked like it was going to be a difficult day to make amends. And then a car came along. Night Seechum rolled down the window and let me in. Thinking about the current situation, I opened the door and got in the car decisively. I sat in the car and breathed a sigh of relief. I was finally clear. Night reminds me that he'll take care of the reporter for me. I thought to myself that if I didn't handle it well, it would be a loss to him. Night Seal suddenly asked me why I'm here. I replied perfunctorily that it was nothing to do with him. Lee Shiching is helpless. Must I talk to him with thorns all over me like this? I got a blockage in my heart and told him that's just the way I am. Shiching was completely speechless. It seemed that he was the one who was meddling in his own business. That's how much I don't want anything to do with him. I told him I'd be moving out with the kids in a couple of days, so I'd be sorry for his trouble. Night Seechum realized something was wrong and asked me what I meant. What's with the temper? I'm heading straight and I just don't feel comfortable living here. Night Seal grabbed my hand and told me to talk to him. My foot suddenly caught on a step. He fell straight into Night Seal's arms. He won't let me go until I make it clear. I went to push Lee Shiching. If you want to be Mo Yongkong's son-in-law, don't come to recruit me. Lee Shiching froze for a moment, realizing that I thought he was going to marry Song Jiayin. He hugged me and said I misunderstood. He wouldn't choose Song Jiayin. It occurred to me that Mo Yongkong has only 2 daughters, except Song Jiayin and me. Night Seechum candles my hand and asks if I understand. I don't care who he picks. Push Night Seal away. Tell him to go away. I don't want to see him now. When you walk into the house, you run up the stairs as fast as you can. When I came back, the two of them wondered what I was running for. Night Seechum looks at me like this and realizes that I'm attracted to him again, calling to see how the news about me is going. But we know someone's already already taken care of it. That's when Drew asked if it was about Mum's news. Li Shiqing is now wondering if Xiaozhua did this. Xiaozhua handed the computer to Li Shiqing. When he saw the news, he helped his mum to suppress it. Li Shiqing put down his heart and asked his men to keep him informed of the progress. And then he hung up. Suddenly his eyes burned into Xiaozhua, asking the two if I had chosen a school. River squeezes out Xiaozhua and realizes that Li Shiqing is going to help them find a school. Li Shiqing wants Xiaozhua to do him a small favor, and he'll help both of them to get into school. At this point the two men looked at each other. Xiaozhua wondered what kind of favor it was. Was it something to do with his mother? Sikuan came over at this time. His father is going to pursue me. Li Shiqing pinched Sikuan's face and said he was a big boy. Li Shiqing wants to know more about my past, which Xiaozhua has hidden from him. Xiaozhua said he had to ask for my permission before he could show it to him. After that, he took Meow Meow to look for me. Xiaozhua asked me to tell Uncle Li. With a complicated expression, I said I could solve the problem myself. I didn't need his help for now. Xiaozhua responded nicely, then he'll just say no to Uncle Li. Suddenly, I felt guilty that I'd already investigated Uncle Li to the bone. At that moment, Meow Meow said she had something to tell me too. I was puzzled. What is it? River hesitantly said that a teacher at school had given her information to a director. I suddenly felt guilty that I hadn't been paying attention to the children's lives lately. I asked River if she wanted to meet the director, but River said she didn't want to. But the teacher set a time for her to meet the director. I was angry at the teacher for disregarding the child's wishes. Soothingly, she said, "When is the director coming?" River heard the teacher say that the director would come to see her tomorrow morning. I said I'd go with River tomorrow. I tucked them in and felt relieved that they were there. I walked out the door. I lamented the poor quality of the primary school I'd found for the time being. At that moment, Li Shiqing came up behind me and asked if I was in trouble. I was so determined, I could solve it myself. Li Shiqing wanted me to be honest. He's not going to eat people. The next day, I told Xiaozhua to go to class and took River to see the director. Meow Meow was worried that the director would force her to act. I reassured River that no one could force her to do anything. I was there. River was immediately happy. In the office, the teacher reassured the director that she'd take care of it. The director thought that River would be a hit, and that she'd get a lot of favors. When I heard what they were saying, I opened the door and shouted at them. River timidly wrapped her arms around my leg. The teacher said it was all a misunderstanding. The director was still shamelessly saying good things, hypocritically looking at River and greeting her warmly, cajoling River into thinking she'd have a better life with her mom after signing the contract. River looked up and asked me if he was telling the truth. I put my hand in front of River's face. I glared at the director. He's really a businessman and he's lying to a child like that. Just let River think about herself. I'll support her. River said she still wanted to go to school with her brother. I warned both of them that River only wanted to go to school, so they shouldn't bother her. Besides, I've never heard of Director Li. River only wants to be a singer. The director showed his true colors and yelled at them in anger. I rushed to cover River's ears so she wouldn't hear the bad guys. I encouraged her to always be the best. The director's face was grim as he tried to make River's life miserable. The teacher next to her rushed to comfort the angry director. I laughed. The director was so full of himself. After that, he picked up River and was ready to leave. The director asked the teacher to stop us. We can't leave without signing today. River curled up in my arms in fear. I reassured her that she'd be fine, warning them this is a school. If you don't leave, call the police. The teacher panicked. We can't call the police. But the director said he wanted to publicize River's life. I held River close to me, worried about how it would affect her future. There was a knock on the door. Li Shiqing walked in and told us what he wanted to do. River cheered up. We were saved. The director was about to speak when he was pushed behind the door. Li Shiqing asks what's going on here. He looks at the teacher and says he's here to get the children's files. But the director stopped River from transferring to another school, citing the company's artists. I told Li Shiqing about it. Meow Meow tugged on Li Xixi's son's coat, added that they were going to tell the truth about her life. When he thought about River's life, he got angry. He shouted at the two of them, "How dare you!" He grabbed the director's arm and twisted it. Feeling the pain, the director screamed for help. Li Shiqing said he'd ask someone to investigate the director's company.